Former Obama campaign manager Jim Messina joins us now with more. Also with us, former Republican governor of Ohio, John Kasich. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on this. Jim, I want to start with you, and I want to talk about the primary calendar and how important these two races are, right? The Iowa caucuses and New Hampshire, in precedent with history here.
Yeah, look, Yasmin, someone needs to move here and become the presumptive challenger to Donald Trump. And, DeSantis' entire hope was always that was going to be Iowa. That seems very unlikely. Nikki Haley's now betting very heavily on New Hampshire. And so precedent says you've got to move and got to get some sort of excitement. Barack Obama obviously surprised everyone and won Iowa and then surged to the nomination. So people are going to be looking very closely at whether anyone can slow down the Donald Trump train.
So is there any possibility here, Jim, you think, especially as we're looking at these polls and how far and away the former president is from everybody else behind him, that he could feasibly not win this nomination if, for instance, Nikki Haley took New Hampshire because she's been surging there?
I don't think so, Yasmin. And the reason I don't think so is because the Republicans changed their rules and now have winner-take-all primaries in these Super Tuesday states. And it's likely he's going to have enough delegates after Super Tuesday to basically be the nominee.
Governor, we've been talking a lot about the border. The former president has penned a new op-ed in the Des Moines Register. I'm talking about immigration, saying there's a nightmare, he says, on the southern border, calling it a quote-unquote invasion. He wrote this: on my first day back in office, I will terminate every open borders policy of the Biden administration and immediately restore the full set of strong Trump border policies. Then we will begin a record-setting deportation operation, Governor.
Well, I mean, it's a very divisive language. And the problem we have at the border is both administrations have had these problems at the border. People want to come to America. They want to escape where they were. And we've not done enough to do comprehensive immigration reform. One of the things ought to be to allow people to come into the country, then leave the country once they've worked. We obviously need more protection on the border, but we need more courts. We need a whole number of resources, but it has to be done in a bipartisan way. And so, I mean, the failure at the border is really rested for a number of years inside both administrations. But, Republicans are going to use the border and say things have gotten much worse. And it's a pretty potent issue, to be honest with you.
Let me ask you this, Governor, because Speaker Mike Johnson, as you well know, along with other lawmakers as well, are at the border today, meeting with other lawmakers down there, with the border czar for Texas Governor Greg Abbott as well. Is there ever a time in which members of Congress actually speak with migrants to understand the story, to understand what they are fleeing, the plight they have faced, the journey they have taken?
I think that some have obviously spent time trying to understand how difficult and excruciatingly difficult some of these lives have been. I think what Americans themselves, not just Republicans, but Republicans or Americans would like some sort of a border policy that makes sense, something that is compassionate, but at the same time controls the ability of people to just enter into the United States and then somehow disappear. I think there is opportunity for some sort of a bipartisan agreement on the border, but it's going to mean that both sides have to avoid, not worry about antagonizing the extremists on both sides and sit down and work this out. I was actually in Congress when we came up with a program under Ronald Reagan. I think it is possible to do one here, and it's necessary to do one, both in the name of compassion and also in the name of making sure that America does have secure borders. There is a path to doing that.
Jim, I want to circle back to the election if we can. I want to talk about the Iowa debate specifically. Vivek Ramaswamy saying he's not going to participate. I'm being told he wouldn't qualify anyway. We know the former president's not going to participate either. So this is going to be a Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis face-off. How much of an influence is this going to have on voters in the final days?
Probably very little. And the reason is, they've seen all these folks repeatedly. They've seen these candidates in each one of their town halls. They've seen them over and over. The ad buys are huge. You can't pick up your phone in Iowa without getting a phone call from one of the campaigns. So it's unlikely there's going to be some breaking news here. And I find it humorous that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to take his toys and go home because he can't qualify. That's a little silly, Yasmin.
Governor, last one to you. We're taking a look at the president's campaign strategy here. We're learning he's essentially going to go after the former president being a threat to democracy in the run up to the election. How much do you think this could actually resonate with swing voters?
Yasmin, listen, it all gets down to the pocketbook. Good news for Joe Biden is there are now reports suggesting that inflation is waning. It all gets down to the pocketbook. It always has in every election for president, because people worried about the kind of support they need for their families and can they have a decent future when it comes to economics and the opportunity to pass something on to their kids. So I think those are issues that matter, but the single biggest issue that affects Joe Biden is the strength of this economy. If it comes roaring back in time, not late, but if it comes back roaring, in time, then he'll be able to take advantage of that, in my opinion.
It's a big moment for the president in communicating about this economy. Inflation right now at 3%, just 1% above where it actually should be. Unemployment remaining pretty steady as well, and avoiding what everybody thought we would be in right now, which is a recession, actually doing quite well with markets rallying over Christmas. Former Governor John Kasich, thank you. Jim Messina, thank you as well.